Hello friend. Season 4 of the Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from a high desert encampment on the frontier of our agrarian hoplite republic. This is a variety program for happy warriors who are getting some seriously bad vibes from the deranged post-Christian technocracy. Grab a tankard of yak's milk and join us by the campfire as Sumo and Cavi return to shake your surveillance, expel your parasites, and generally have a good time. Are you ready? Stand by.
Mystical American Patriots Society, now available in 3 dimensions.
Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Were you in the yard with your wife and children, or working on some stage in LA? Did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against the blue sky? Did you shout out in anger or fear for your neighbor? And did you just sit down and cry? Did you weep for the children who lost their dear loved ones and pray for the ones who don't know? Did you rejoice with the people who walked out of the rubble and sob for the ones left below? Did you burst out with pride for the red, white, and blue and the heroes who died just doing what they do? Did you look up to heaven for some kind of answer and look at yourself and what really matters? I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I can tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. We have to build the third temple and kill all the Muslims so Jesus can come back and send the Jews to hell. I think I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. Despite that, I am all for aggressive military intervention in places I can't even find on a map. I believe that the Jews are the chosen people, and even if they don't care about Jesus, and I say I'm a Christian, but I want to kill everybody, so I can force the apocalypse. I'm just a singer of simple songs, not a real political man. I like going to rodeos and being confused about pronouns, but I just want to kill everyone in our reign. You go on this all day. How you doing? How you doing, Kevin?
I feel like you sang this song before last time everything was crazy.
I did. There's an opportunity. This song is. Here's the thing. I'm gonna be singing this song my entire life. My entire life, I will sing this song. You know why?
Probably.
Because we're always doing this forever.
Yep.
I realized. Yes. Well, I didn't. I mean, I made a note yesterday, or the day before. My entire life, not an exaggeration, my entire life, almost without pause, and not just a cat's pause, but like pause, like a stop, right? My entire life, the United States government has been blowing up Muslims. My entire life, the entire time, everyone has the gall to act like, why are there terrorists? Why are they angry? They hate us for our freedom. We have McDonald's. And we freedom. I don't know what the freedoms are. We had the freedom and they hate us for it. It's nothing to do whatsoever with the constant, omnipresent bombers in the air dropping bombs on their heads. That has nothing to do with it, despite the fact that we've done that, again, without exaggeration, nonstop, every moment, almost, for my entire life plus beforehand. I was born into a world that was blowing up Muslims. When I was born, when I first opened my eyes and saw the rays of the sun, and the Muslim Egyptian doctor that was in charge of my birth, which is true, he was Muslim Egyptian. When he was there, he was blown up instantaneously by a drone strike. Just because. I don't know why. He was a terrorist. I guess. There's a terrorist, and I'll have to sing that song again later. And I'll have to sing it again later, and I'll have to sing it forever because apparently a large number of people in the U.S. What would you call it? Populace, and in the U.S. government, maybe even a larger number of people by percentage, believe that we have to destroy all the Jews to build the third temple. What do you think about that, Cavi? Where are you on third temple?
Destroy the Jews to build the third temple?
Or the Muslims? I don't know. Well, the thing is, here's the thing. I'm going to start sharing a screen. Let me share a screen, and then we'll talk some more. No, you got to. Well, the thing is, I guess. See, this is the thing. This is the problem with it. Like, don't we? If you believe that Jesus has to come. If you believe that, can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yep. The mystery of the black square.
Yep. If you believe that Jesus, if you believe in Jesus, like so many people say they do, and that he's necessary to get to salvation, I don't see how they square the Jews not going to hell when they die or something. Because I remind everyone, to be a Jew in the year 2026 is to explicitly reject Jesus Christ. That's the whole religion, pretty much, is no, Jesus was not the Messiah. We're waiting on somebody else. We need a different one. Sorry. That's the entire religion is it is more anti-Christ by definition, not in like a weird polemical way, like anti-Jesus, than Islam or whatever, than any religion in the world. And so somehow It's Christians' duty to help that religion expand, one. But I think so that you can build the third temple so that Jesus can come back. And I guess what would happen then is that the Jews are condemned to hell at the end of time. It's very perverse. It's very weird. Is this tracking? Are you familiar with this logic? Is this in Canada?
I think the logic is more like Jesus comes back and then all of the Jews realize, oh, now we get it, and then they're saved.
Yeah, but that's like not what it's in the. I don't get this at all because I've had people
I don't
try
get
to
it either.
because okay, if it, I don't think you get to say, oh, right, I guess it is Jesus now that he shows up and is destroying the world. Sorry, whoops, I'm changing on your team now. I don't think that's how it works. Otherwise, everyone would do that. Right? Like I don't think
so I like Chuck Missler a lot. He's a Bible guy studying thing. He's got a giant obsession with Israel and all this stuff. And he would tell you that basically, and he makes a strong case for this. It's correct, but there's like a judicial blindness over Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in, and once stuff comes through, and then God goes back to dealing with Israel, and hopefully they all get saved at that point.
Okay, you cut out briefly in the middle. There's a judicial blindness over Israel. What then happens?
Yeah, and until, quote, the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. I think Paul says that. Mm-hmm. And then, so basically, when the final last person converts to Christianity, the rapture happens, and then God starts dealing with Israel again. And all this end time stuff happens, and they get saved somehow.
And you know what? Mazel tov, if that's your belief system about how the end times works. I think that I would be very confident in I would not be so confident in my own predictions about the future that I was willing to say, and therefore I will blow up 7 or 8 countries to make this happen. I just wouldn't do that. I think that you run a big risk of being even slightly wrong and having God be like, what the hell were you doing? And you're like, I had to make the third temple so that you could come. It's like, that wasn't what was going to happen.
Yeah, but even if that's what's going to happen, like your goal should be converting people to Christianity, not blowing people up.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's so weird and perverse. Like, I don't know. I would like there to be a different reason. I can come up with some. I don't know if they're true. I do wish that that Trump or some other government official, Rubio, somebody, would come out and say, look, the real reason we're there is to control Middle Eastern oil, to prevent Russia and China from having a sufficient oil supply to ever really challenge us. And we use Israel and concerns of the Jews as a smokescreen for that. Yeah, we like the Jews, but that's a secondary reason. That would at least make sense. I'd say, okay, well, I'm not on board with it still, but this makes sense. You're not trying to end the world, right? But that would be within the parameters of like what an empire normally does. But when your goal is apparently to bring about to hasten the end of the world through military means, I don't know. It just, and that is what they're doing.
I don't get this whole third temple stuff though, right? So the Al-Aqsa Mosque is supposedly on where the temple needs to go.
Right.
So I guess like their plan is they blow up that mosque, they build the temple, and then what? Like what happens if they build a temple and then Jesus just doesn't come back, or whatever Jewish Messiah they're waiting for just doesn't come back?
Well, that's the thing. So it would be a very involved process either way. Like this is a long term. So they'd have to. So what I gather from listening and asking people questions about their beliefs about this is you blow up the mosque currently sitting where the temple allegedly was. I should reiterate, we don't actually know that that's what the temple was. The Western Wall.
Yeah, there's a bunch of theories on that. I've heard a bunch of strong cases that it's in a bunch of different spots.
Yeah, the Western Wall is claimed by some Jews to be part of the remnants of the old temple. It is not, in all probability. And Christians that believe that are going 100% against the direct words of Jesus, who said, not one stone shall be left upon another. And so when they go there and they touch the wall, they're like them touching the temple. The whole thing, I just convert to Judaism, guys. It's fine. No one would care if you just all mass converted to Judaism. But if you're like, we need a temple and I gotta go this thing and I gotta celebrate Seder and you start saying Shabbat Shalom at your house, just be Jewish. What are you doing? The perverse thing is trying to be two religions at the same time that don't work together. Judaism and Christianity don't go together. Because, as stated, Jewishness is about Jesus is not the Messiah. And when you're like, no, I'm the... I don't know. But they have to blow up.
If a Jewish person converts to Christianity, their family will hold a funeral for them because they're dead to them.
Yeah. Yeah. They and again, all of the typical things, not every Jewish family does this. That is a tradition that is widespread amongst Judaism. Not every Jew does that, of course. Everything you say about any group of people is not true for any individual, for a given one or some individuals inside that group of people. We're all adults. We understand how to speak in statistical terms. But yeah, they don't go together. And when you're like, just I don't, and you start, if someone starts saying Yeshua, know that person, if there's a white American that starts going around talking about Yeshua, just know that they would happily blow up as many children as necessary to build a third temple. Happily. And they wouldn't think twice about it. They're like the most crazy people on the planet. Or, planet, quote unquote. It's really insane. And but here's what I gather is what you do is, okay, here's what I think the plan is. Okay, so right now there's a mosque at the place where the temple allegedly used to be. Again, allegedly, big allegedly, because maybe it wasn't. There's good reason to think it wasn't, actually, in many cases. But anyway, I digress about that. You have to blow up the mosque, and then we build the temple there, okay? Then the Jews who claim to be the same people as the people from the Old Testament, which again, Shabbat Shalom, maybe, but it's a long time ago. Anyway, are the Cherokee that you run across in America today really the same people as the Cherokee from 700 years ago? Really? Whatever. Anyway, okay, so they're claiming to be the same people. So then the Jewish people start redoing sacrifices in the temple, right? So because again, they reject the sacrifice of Jesus. They think it was not a real sacrifice in any sense. They don't think it counted to God. They don't think his sacrifice was for the remission of sins. They do not agree with Christianity at all. And so if they do that, they start sacrificing animals again in the temple for the remission of sins. Yes, Cabby. Oh, yeah, it's the Cabby the cat who could be sacrificed. Okay, so they start re-sacrificing this camel, and they need like some unblemished heifer or something to start it. Who knows? And then, okay, so then they start doing that, and then they hope, and this is where it branches off into three separate branches of ideas. And Zionist Christians, mostly evangelicals, who are completely insane, will say, okay, well, then when this happens, you see, no. So what happens first? Everyone agrees, at least I don't know about the Muslims, but the Jews and the Christians agree on the next part, that someone claiming to be the Messiah will come. And the Jews will think he's the real Messiah. And the Christians think he's a fake Messiah, the Antichrist. Okay, so the Christians have built into their system that the Jews are going to announce a Messiah that isn't the real Messiah. He's actually going to be the Antichrist. So they're helping them do this to, it's crazy, to bring up to, and then the Antichrist comes and he declares himself God inside the temple. And he's the abomination of desolation, quote unquote. This is from the Bible. And then he does that. And then when that happens, shortly thereafter, Christ returns from the sky and says, no, actually, I'm the Messiah. And then, depending on who you ask, people are taken up into heaven in a rapture situation. And there's a period of tribulation where the people are trying to follow the Antichrist, but the Antichrist is like the devil, so it doesn't work out, and there's a lot of pain and death and suffering. And then eventually the Jews decide, I think, wait, maybe Jesus was the real Messiah, and then he comes back again or something. But from the Muslim perspective, they also believe Jesus comes back, which is but he does something else. I don't know. It's not something that should be part of U.S. policy. Is the bottom line of it. Whatever all that is, this crazy, convoluted triangle of conflicting ideas about the end times, and needing to build a temple for a religion that has nothing to agree with your religion. And again, I will reiterate: it makes more sense to say Islamo-Christian than Judeo-Christian, because Muslims like Jesus. They don't think he was God, but they like him. They like Christ. They think it goes in order of prophets. They think it is Muhammad the best, Jesus number 2, and then Moses 1, 2, 3. And it's pretty high, right? It's not God, but it's pretty high. Whereas Jews think Jesus is in hell for being an agent of Satan. And
what's happening to him in hell?
Well, some say that he's boiling in a pot of excrement, but that's not an agreed upon thing. But some Jews think that. So, anyway, the long and the short of that is Mike Huckabee should probably be gotten out of all power and thrown into a dungeon for treason or something. He's trying to basically start a holy war for a religion that is not his, to create a third temple so that he can be raptured, the rest of the world can rot in hell under the Antichrist, and stop. That's a crazy thing. Mike Huckabee should be arrested on grounds of treason and brought before a jury of his peers and sentenced to something. I don't know what, but he should be sentenced to something. Because it's insane. It's insane. He's a genocidal maniac, as is Ted Cruz, as is most of people. As are a lot of people in Israel. And also the Holy Land sucks. This is a big problem for me personally. Have you noticed this, Cavi? It's allegedly a land of milk and honey, which is why it was being given, but it's kind of a dump.
It's almost as if it was left desolate.
Almost as if it was left desolate because people reject. Almost as if it's not. If it ever was a land flowing with milk and honey, it is not now. It is a giant it's desolate. It's just like a garbage place. That's the crazy thing. Like, the most blessed land in the world is I don't know, Switzerland. Is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Parts of America, Canada, are gorgeous. The Great Lakes areas, parts of China, parts of Japan. Nowhere in the Middle East is nice, beautiful. None of it. It's all garbage. And it's this giant war over a place that isn't good. So, I don't know. All I know is you should not be blowing up the world to try and summon the end of times. For numerous reasons, because most presently for the individual is your interpretation of how it's going to go is probably not right. Most everyone's been wrong before you, and if you're really staking a big claim when you start killing people, but whatever. But I'll tell you what, in 5 years, I'll probably not even 2 years. I'll have to sing that song again when we're still in Iran or something, or Beirut or Turkey, and I'll change the word to Turkey. And we'll just continue bombing, blowing up Muslims, and then calling you bad at home, calling other people bad for saying naughty words. Racism is bad. Now, I have spent my entire careers in Washington blowing up brown people. Yes, but that had nothing to do with racism. Isn't it funny how, like, this is why I don't take any of it seriously. Everyone in Europe freaked, and in America, all the white people anyway, freaked the hell out when Ukraine got attacked. And they just kind of sleepwalk through the routine destruction of every brown person. And it's like, is that just because they're white? Yes, it is, probably, isn't it? Like, it's the most racist thing possible. And I don't know. I think people just project. I think they know that. And so to compensate for that, they project very hard about microaggressions. Because if you police enough microaggressions, maybe that makes up for your very, very large F-52 bomber aggressions. Maybe microaggressions make up for giant macroaggressions. We need a bigger word than macro. Because I consider like a macroaggression like a slap in the face or you punch somebody. What kind of aggression level is it to carpet bomb them? That's got to be more than a macroaggression, right? Do you have any ideas on what macro?
Is there like a prefix that's larger than macro?
We could do it like Starbucks. You know, they have the venti
aggression.
The venti aggression. The venti aggressions will make
the
up
tall
for
aggression.
Yeah, right. We'll make up for it because we put enough black people at Harvard. That means we're still good people. Bang! That's what it is, really. It's so perverse, and everyone.
It's the shopping cart.
It's the shopping cart. Exactly. This is why you do not ever, ever, ever return the shopping cart, because that's who you are if you do that. I have this tiny little nonsense morality code that I adhere by. It's called returning the shopping cart. And then that means because I do that, I'm a heckin' good person, and it does not matter how many babies I abort. Or if I put on leather bondage gear and parade down the street on a dog leash in front of children. It doesn't matter. I return the shopping cart. That is the whole stupid thing, which is why I do not do it. And you shouldn't either. You should take shopping carts out of the thing and throw them about the parking lot. Just throw them around and say, ha! Because it is such a... This is the entire problem. It's Freudian again. Freud was never wrong. He was never wrong. Okay, he was wrong sometimes, but he was right a lot. And that's why no one likes him. You could write an entire dissertation. Maybe I will. About why psychology is now ineffective because they are psychologically coping and in denial about how right Freud was and trying to come up with something else. They are doing in a systemic, occupational wide fashion exactly what Freud predicted people would do. They are projecting. They're tying their ego to small acts of righteousness. Allegedly, although, there's no real morality attached to a shopping cart, so that they can get away with every vice under the sun. And that's why you shouldn't return the shopping cart. Never return the shopping cart. Set the shopping cart on fire. It would be better than returning it. It would be better than returning it. If there was a mentally handicapped person in charge of getting your shopping cart, shove it into them. Knock them over. Anything. Not really, but you should not do what they want you to do because it's the dumbest thing. I wear a Be Kind t-shirt. Be kind. It's got a rainbow under it, But then I will talk about how I want to
completely rip apart anyone with a Russian last name. It's absurd. I don't know.
Your
Everyone's
Be
crazy.
Kind t-shirt doesn't have a B on it?
That Be Kind. Yeah, and it's got a little Winnie the Pooh. And it's a Winnie the Pooh, and he's got a honey pot that says "Be kind" as he follows a honeybee. As he follows a honeybee to the soccer game, the Little League soccer game, where the moms with their "Be Kind" t-shirts sit around and get virulently worked up about the idea of someone being raped in prison as just desserts for a sexual crime. Because, as I mentioned before, everyone in this country is a psychopath. Every single person except me and some of our listeners. Every single person in this country is a psychopath. That's the secret sauce. The secret sauce to America and why it kind of works is every single person is a deranged psychopath with a gun. That's what America is. Making the wildest justifications, the most obscene leaps of logic to justify anything imaginable. We will do. We will do that in order to further whatever it is that we want to do. And we don't know what we want to do. That's the beauty of it. They don't even know what they want to do. They just know they need to do it. And you better get out of their way. You better get out of their way. It's America. I'm not sure I could tell you the difference between Iraq and Iran, but I know they have to all die. They have to all die because they have a vaguely Muslim sounding name. But then when they come over here, we're all hold hands. And I get mad at people for not liking Muslims. It's so, oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see why everyone has problems. This is the problem with being God. Really, this is what today's message is about, the problem of being God, and the mystery of the black square, which we're going to talk about. But I mean, imagine you're God and you have to deal with all these people. I mean, just imagine you're up in heaven looking down at the world and you're like, I mean, where would you even start with all these people? Where would you even begin? Granted, you're omnipotent and omniscient, but still, it's like, woof, you'd be going, this is quite a problem. This is quite a tangle. Do you know who this character is, Cappy?
That's Q.
My favorite character in all of television. Were you a Star Trek person? Are you a Star Trek person?
Kind of. I've seen all of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise.
So the answer to that is yes.
I haven't seen the original series though, but I have seen the movies.
Okay, but if you said I've seen like four, I asked you, are a Star Trek person, like I've seen all four season series and all the movies. Yeah. The answer to that is
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, my first encounter with a Star Trek when I was probably, I don't know, 4th grade. My family took a trip to Germany, and at the airport there was a Star Trek convention, and I had never seen Star Trek before. And we were sitting down waiting on the plane. This guy in a Klingon suit was just sort of standing around. He sat down next to me, and I was very freaked out about it because I didn't understand what was happening. But this is Q. He's basically God in the Star Trek universe, kind of, not really. He's a member of, I guess, alien species called the Q, who have omnipotent powers. They're not omniscient. They don't know everything. They know a lot. I don't think they can read your mind, but anything they can imagine, pretty much, they make happen. And I was going to talk about, because I've been meditating a lot recently on the problems of being God through the lens of Star Trek and a few other media problems. But if you're just listening, it's a slide. It has a black square on it. It has Q on one side, played by Jean de Lacy. Is that his name? Do you remember the actor's name? Great actor. I don't remember. Cavi, did you ever watch My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic?
No.
Well, you should have. I was never a brony. However, it is a good show.
Are you sure?
Huh?
Are you sure? I'm suspicious now.
No,
you brought it up.
I had my daughter was the prime age when My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
You've got an excuse.
I do have an excuse, and she was very into it. We still have maybe 200 of the action figures she's got a little collection of them. She's outgrown it now, but she was right in that pocket of the perfect age group and I would watch it with her, and it was a funny show. But I bring that up because this actor plays basically the same character as Q in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. He plays a character that's like half dragon, half horse, half lion, but it's this Miss Frankenstein called Discord. And Discord is basically an omnipotent trickster being who makes problems. So, and all his mannerisms are the same. He's the same character. They even do a callback in one episode where he's snapping his fingers and putting them in all these different scenarios, and they're on board the Enterprise. And he goes, "This looks familiar." And then whatever. It's a funny show. Anyway, I've got Q here. It says, "The problem of being God, the mystery of the black square." And then it has 3 sentences at the bottom. Existence is relationship. Infinity is a lot, actually. And if you are everything, you're also nothing. How do you feel about this, Cavi? Is it whetting your appetite for a discussion?
Yes, I'm very wet.
I love the Star Trek set design. I wish my house was decorated like that, like this wood paneling,
carpet, and
everything's carpeted, and this wood paneling and like mauve colors. Love it.
Yeah, it's very of its time.
Very of its time. Okay, how do you know you exist? All right, I have two black squares here, Cavi. Pretend they're both pictures of outer space. And yes, before I begin, some people that's listened to or have read a lot of him will say some of these ideas are from Alan Watts, and I will say yes, they are. I'm gonna do them with a different spin, but he's the first person to come up to my knowledge some of these examples. So if you hear some Alan Wattsiness in here, yes, that's where it's from. Which of these two pictures of outer space is filled with light, Cavi? Left or right?
It's a trick question because outer space isn't real.
That's true, but just imagine normal space. Which one would be filled with light?
They both look pretty dark.
They both look dark. They're both black squares. That's correct. The answer is it's either the left one, the right one, either or both or none. Both or neither. Because here's what a paradox: being filled with light and devoid of light actually look exactly the same. They look exactly the same. And if you say, Sumo, that's what are you talking about? What do you think light would be, listener? Viewer? What do you think light would look like? You don't ever see light. You see light bouncing off of things. But pure light in itself, without an object, you've never seen. You've never, ever seen it. For example, so you imagine that a space filled with light, quote unquote, would be white, like you're standing in that outfitting room from the Matrix, but it's actually the opposite. It's only when you introduce an object into that space that you can tell if there is light or not. For example, so here's some. All right, so here's an example. You got this. Are you familiar with the term collimator, Cavi? Collimator.
Nope. I'm learning new things today.
A collimator comes from the word columns, to make into columns. A collimator turns things into columns. And essentially it is a device used for any kind of light or rays, lasers, radiation, any sort of thing where you have, because if you have, say, a radiation source or a light bulb or whatever, and you want to direct that light in one direction. Well, a light bulb emits light in all directions. So the way that you do that is you would cover it with like a dome with like a hole in it. And I've tried to draw that here. That way the light can only come out of that hole. And if you make that collimator sufficiently large or sufficiently away from the light source, just by the geometry, the only rays of light that are going to be able to come out that hole are pretty much in one direction. They're not going in different directions. And so if you see in this diagram here, there's some people standing not directly in line of that hole, of that opening of the collimator, and they can't see the light. It would just go right past them. Think of a flashlight or light coming through clouds. You only see the beam of the flashlight if there's crud in the air. If there's not crud in the air, you turn on the flashlight and you'll see where it hits the wall or the ground or whatever, but you won't see it in the air. If the air is filled with dust or the air is filled with pollen or whatever it is outside, then you can see the trace of the beam of light. But without there being things to bounce it off of, you don't see it. You only see, just like you can see rays of the sun on a day if there's like stuff in the air, but mostly the light coming down, you don't actually see the light itself, right? The light is shining on things and that reflects to your eyes, but if it doesn't bounce back to your eyes, you don't see it. It just goes right past you. So if there's nothing to reflect the light to your eyeball or some other receiving detector instrument, you can't tell if the light exists. These three people here have no idea whether or not that light is on. Could be on, could be off. That beam of light is going to go straight past them, never reflect into their eyes even a little bit. But if you put a ball in the way of that light, as you see in this diagram, now it's going to bounce off, and then they can see it. Boop, 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 boop. And then you know that there is light, and you could tell. And if you couldn't see that anymore, you'd be like, "Oh, the light must have turned off." So you introduce an object. You introduce an object into the light, something which is not the light, and now the light can be seen. But the light cannot be seen without an object. If there's nothing to reflect the light to your eye or some other, you cannot tell if the light exists. This explains all of reality, really, when you understand it. Because the light's presence can only be made known by things which are not itself. The light's presence can only be made known by the presence of things which are not itself. Think about this. Which contains all the other colors, white or black? The answer is both. Okay, so there you go. There's a picture of this. This is fake. I don't believe in space like this, but this has the concept. That same black square, if you introduce a planet into the mix, suddenly you see it and you know that there's sunlight. But that light has to come, hit the thing, and then bounce towards your eye. Otherwise, you don't see that light. It just goes this way, and it never comes to your eyeball. And the black space, although it is filled with light, appears completely dark. It is identical to there being no light at all, unless there's something in there. Unless there's an object in there, something which is not the light has no being. And that is a very profound thing that you must internalize to really quite begin to understand what God is. So, if you watch how people talk, they'll say, well, that's not real life, or that's not real, or, be realistic. And what they mean by that, invariably, real is always defined as something that's difficult, or stressful, or sad, or violent. They'll say, Sumo, you've got all these high-minded ideals about not blowing up people in the Middle East. But you got to be realistic. They're terrorists. Realistic is we have to kill people. That's real. See? The eternal cry of be sensible. All that means in the end is essentially just be defined by struggle. That means define yourself, define life, define what is real by what is difficult, what is sad. There's such a tendency, especially as people get older, to define growing old with growing cynical. And you hear this all the time. You're like, when you grow up and you're divorced and you've had sickness, you'll see life really sucks. You're young and naive now, but believe you me, you're like, it's gonna suck, that sort of thing. People do that all the time, and that's not true. You could just as easily look at all the good things in life, but this is what people want to do. This is the black square. This is the black pill. This is what they do. This is a quote from Tolkien. He said, not long ago, though it may seem, I heard a clerk at Oxford declare that he, quote, welcomed the proximity of mass production robot factories and the roar of self-obstructive traffic because it brought his university into, quote, contact with real life. He may have meant that the way men were living and working in the 20th century was increasing in barbarity at an alarming rate, and that the loud demonstration of this in the streets of Oxford might serve as a warning that it is not possible to preserve for long an oasis of sanity in a desert of unreason by mere offenses, without actual offensive action, practical and intellectual. I fear he did not, however. In any case, the expression of, quote, real life in this context seems to fall short of academic standards. The notion that motor cars are more alive than, say, centaurs or dragons is curious. That they are more real than, say, horses, pathetically absurd. How real, how startlingly alive is a factory chimney compared with an elm tree, the poor obsolete thing, insubstantial dream of an escapist. I love that quote. People will say it's real life. And by that they mean, oh, well, this factory job is more real and more life than a horse, which is absurd, right? It's more real and more life than the ocean and all its creatures. It's more real and it's more life than, like, you know, this, and they'll say this about it, you know, everything. What they said, this is real life, and by that they mean death. By that they mean killing. By that they mean destruction. It's the same exact fallacy that is made in the sciences. In the science of biology, especially, where the science of life is defined almost exclusively by how things are when they are dead. The science of life is you kill something and you cut it apart and you look at its insides. And that's the science of life. That's what biology is. Everyone's dissected a frog in high school. The science of life is you kill something. You make it dead first. And that's how you know it's real. See? And that is fundamentally a constraint and a conceit of the human ego, which cannot actually understand life on an intellectual level, because life cannot be intellectualized. But you can understand things when they are dead, and they're no longer changing, and they're frozen in time, and you can pick them apart, and you can categorize them and put them in this or that bin. And this is the whole problem with science in a nutshell. This is the whole problem with all of philosophy, and probably since the year 1373, this has been the problem with Western civilization, is that we have defined what is real by what is dead, what is hard, what is difficult, and declare it to be fanciful and the dreams of an escapist, everything that is actually alive and joyous and happy. But see, they don't know the real secret. See, that the black and white both contain all the colors. You know, teeth cannot bite this thing right here of you have to introduce an object into space before light can be visible. You have to have something which is not light to make light. Absent this, light does not exist, practically speaking. There is no way to ever get near it. It just is a thing that could be there, it could not. You have no way to ever know, except if you introduce something which is not light. Are you following so far, Cabby? You speak for just a minute.
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay, well, tell people how you're feeling.
How I'm feeling. It makes sense. I've never really thought about it, but it totally makes sense.
Good. Keep talking for 1 second. Fill the air.
Keep talking for 1 second. Fill the air. Fill the air. A little cat dance. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have anything to say. I got just put on the spot all of a sudden.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, thank goodness.
You need a dance routine to pull out in moments like that. So this is how life works. See? Okay, so it's the same problem as trying to get your teeth to bite themselves, right? Your teeth cannot bite themselves. Your fingers cannot feel themselves. Taste buds cannot taste themselves. Eyes cannot see themselves, and ears cannot hear themselves, at least so long as they're healthy. If your ear hears itself, that's called tinnitus, and it's bad. It's very obstructive for your mental health to hear your ear all the time. If you see your eyes, you have a cataract. When things are actually working, you don't see them. If you feel your stomach, usually you have a stomach ache. When your body is properly functioning, it's invisible to your consciousness. And that's a sign, by the way, that your brain is broken because you're constantly self-conscious and worrying about stuff. You're going, oh, I'm anxious. I'm worried about this. What if I'm not good enough? When you're properly, you don't ever go around, unless you've stubbed your toe, you don't walk around thinking about your toe. But when you have a body part that's injured, it's constantly screaming at you. Pay attention to me. Just like the light here, see, when it's healthy and it's there, it's invisible. It's invisible. Here's do you know anything about sewing, Cavi? About sewing? How much of a seamstress are you? Or what's a seams man? Seamster? A seamster.
Seamster?
Yeah, it's like a teamster, but for sewing.
I had to take a sewing class in grade 7 in like shops class. I made a pretty sweet gym bag that I still have.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I am not a good sewer. I tried to get into crochet one time because I thought it would be cool to be able to just like make something like that you could wear. But it turns out that takes a long time. And you have to really
but my wife's all into sewing.
What now?
My wife's big into sewing.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's a very complicated art form, really. And I've got 2 diagrams here. This is the most basic sewing pattern. It's the warp and the woof. Although nowadays they use the term weft. I don't know why. But weft used to be called woof. And it's 2 different ways of... Anyway, this holds together by one piece of... So you have a piece of string, and then suddenly it turns into a shirt. You say, how does that do that? Well, what you do is it's like two sticks. You set them against. One stick cannot stand up by itself, but 2 sticks can lean against each other. In the same way, by threading the string over against itself so that it's holding each other up. It's that joke of Mitch Hedberg. My belt holds up my pants, but my pants loops hold up my belt. Who's the real hero here? And they hold each other up. You basically everything actually is pulling itself up by its own bootstraps, except the bootstraps are also pulling on you. That's how this right here, this image of the warp and the woof is how all of existence happens. Okay, so if a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? This is the classic question, and the answer to this is no. I can answer it for you. The answer to this is no. That's the answer. Anyone that's ever told you otherwise or made it, no, it doesn't make a sound. Why? Because, well, I can give you a very simple explanation. Sound is something that requires a conscious observer to happen. If there is no ear or some other recording instrument, which will then transfer it into sound, like the microphone or something, there is no sound. Just as color is something which requires a sufficient organ to produce, you have to have an eyeball. The rays of light are shining. If there's no eyeball to see them, there's no color. However, so that's a pretty easy to understand explanation. But a better question is, did the tree even fall? If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it or to see it happen, did it even fall? The answer to that is also no. And I will try and...
that's what I was going to say.
What? Say again?
Say if it wasn't observed, did it even exist to fall?
Right, exactly. So a universe with no conscious observers is a nonsensical proposition. That's what you have to get in your head. The entire premise behind what was the universe like before there was man, before there was humanity, is flawed. There was no universe before humanity. There has never been, there could never be. And moreover, God has been a man since the very beginning of time. That's a thing which this is a thread of Christian thought, which has really only been preserved in the East, and I give Eastern Orthodox big credit for this. However, they don't really talk about it too much, but it is preserved in their artwork, in their iconography. When they have the creation of the world, Eden. They have Jesus there doing it. And that's correct. God has been a man since the beginning of time. Here's some various artwork of Eastern Orthodoxy. You've got Jesus there creating the sun and moon, standing on the earth. There he is pulling the water, separating the waters, making the day and night. Here he is with all the animals. But the idea is, and that's what you're supposed to imagine, by the way, when you read in the Bible that not if you're a Jewish person, of course, but when you read in the Bible that God was walking with Adam and Eve in the garden, what you're meant to imagine is that is actually Jesus. He's the one there walking with Adam and Eve in the garden. And when Abraham is standing there talking and bargaining with God about, like, will you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? You're supposed to imagine he's standing there talking to Jesus. And when the angel of the Lord comes and wrestles with Jacob, he's wrestling with Jesus. You see? And that tricks people up because you go, no, he's not incarnated yet. Aha! You've yet to fully be mystical enough, my friends. Because from God's perspective, year zero is the crucifixion and resurrection. That's year zero. Here's a diagram I made. It's got year zero at the bottom. It's got Salvador Dali's picture of the crucifixion of Jesus, which is a great one. And then it has arrows going up the side in a circular fashion, one to the left, one to the right, pointing back to the Garden of Eden with eternity. And on one side it has 80, and I have some pictures of two different millenniums there, first millennium, second millennium. And the other side it has BC. We have the Greeks and the Egyptians and all that stuff that happened back then. And this is how that's from the blood of, for the blood is running still from the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. It's the same myth encoded in everywhere you go. Because the crucified on a tree, you got the tree of death, the tree of life. The tree of death, the tree of life. Right there, the same thing, starting in the same position. And in fact, another thing the Eastern Orthodox well preserved is the idea that the hill of Golgotha, where Christ was crucified, was the site where the original tree of the Garden of Eden was, that Adam and Eve plucked the fruit from. That's a big claim, but it makes complete narrative sense and ties it all together because you've replanted the tree, basically. The tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, becomes the tree of death, which returns back to the tree of life. So from God's perspective, outside of time, year zero was actually the incarnation has already happened.
Hey, here's another fun fact about Golgotha. It's also the exact location where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac.
Right. Exactly. Okay. The great fallacy of our age is the observer forgets himself. Here's a Redditor. He's dumb. He's got blonde hair and he's got stupid yellow eyes. And he says, what? To me, it's trivially, I can never pronounce that word, trivially easy to imagine an observerless universe. And he's got a little thought bubble, and it goes up to a little universe there. But and then it has the arrow pointing at him as the observer. He's the one conjuring this image up, right? Nothing, here's the thing, nothing we can ever be sure has happened without someone observing it, correct? And you can say, like, well, I observed it after the fact or whatever, but the information to exist in our world has to have been observed by a conscious observer. Therefore, since there are zero examples of anything existing without us having awareness of it, that must mean you are required for reality to exist. And when I say you, I mean you specifically, listener. You are actually a necessity. Aquinas was wrong about this, about contingent beings and non-contingent beings. I'll get to that in a minute. This is, we've sort of proved this by the double slit experiment. Kevy, I've talked about this before. What's your opinion on the double slit experiment?
I don't know. That we learned that you observe things, and then if you don't observe them, crazy stuff happens. Doesn't exist. Has
it kept you up at night?
No, not really.
It's kept me up so much. It's kept me up so much.
No, so okay. So I think I've always thought of the universe as being essentially a simulation.
Mhm.
So it's essentially like a really fancy, complicated video game. If it's not being observed, it's not being rendered to like save hardware resources or something.
Well, that's
That's
one
just
way to
how I
think
kind
about
of
it. I
think
mean,
of it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of directionally true. So the double slit experiment was this famous physics experiment, which has been one of the ones that's been repeated many times. You can do that. You can actually do this yourself, listener. It's not that hard if you get yourself a. What the hard part is getting a device to emit like basically one electron or one photon at a time, which you need like you can get if you get a cathode ray tube and break it apart, you can actually make this, or you can even do it with the pieces of your microwave. If you're willing to take apart a microwave, you can get the necessary components. But this is something you can do yourself. You have a light source. Usually, it's not like it doesn't really work. Like I said, you have to have something that emits a very low level of light. You want like one photon at a time, essentially one electron or very, very few, because otherwise it becomes too chaotic to actually watch. It gets too messy. But you shine the light through at a barrier, and the barrier has two holes in it. The barrier is a sort of collimator, just like we talked about earlier, and you will do it twice. And you'll have some sort of recording media on the back, a piece of film maybe that'll darken or not darken, depending on if it's struck by light. And if you have detectors on each side of those holes that will detect whether or not the photon or the electron went through that hole, then, and that's not, you just need something with like a something to detect the passing electric charge. So like basically a little in-air amp meter. If you have those on each side, and then you're going to do it with those not in place, or with them on or off. If you have the detectors turned off, what happens is you will get the light or the electron, it works with either one, will act as a wave. So if you have waves in a pool, you've seen this, you drop two pebbles, they will have concentric waves that come out from the pebbles. And when those waves hit, they will form what's called an interference pattern where they interfere with each other. And at some places, those two waves will add, the crests of each wave will come together and they'll add and they'll become bigger. At some places, the troughs will come together and they'll become a deeper trough. And at some places, the crest of one and the trough of the other will meet and they will cancel each other out and become, neutral. And that's what you get. You would get that on your piece of film in the background. You get a wave-like pattern of interference with the detectors off. However, if you turn them on, then you get a very different pattern. This is saying, okay, it went through this one, it went through that one. It went through that one, the photon went through this hole, or it went through that hole. You get actually just two spots. Meaning that, and this is the standard interpretation of this. So this is just what happens, and you can interpret this in all kinds of ways. What's inarguable is that you get a different result depending on whether or not you look at it, and you try to see which hole the photon goes through. The way it's traditionally been interpreted is, well, light or electrons act as a wave, meaning that they exist in probability all over in this like realm of probability, propagating through space until someone looks at it, and then it has the wave function, they call it, of probability has to collapse into a specific determined, like it was this one or that one. Up in the second image, it's indeterminate. Which one did it go through? Neither, both, neither or both. Doesn't matter. In this one, you had to have known which one it went through. I know this is a little confusing for people if you've never encountered this before, because it's very. But when you look and you say, okay, which one did it go through? The universe has to pick. When you're not looking, it can do both or it can do neither. And it will produce two different results. And here's the craziest bit about this. This even works with delayed choice, retroactively. So, if you turn on the detectors and you have them on, but You have the information from the detectors going to a computer that stores the data, right? You're not watching it in real time. This is the craziest thing that's ever been done, in my opinion. And it's not talked about because it's so uncomfortable, its implications. If you have the detectors on, like normal, but you destroy the data before you look at the film, you delete it, you destroy the computer, you will get the interference pattern again. You've turned them on, so it's not just that they're turned on. People say, "Oh, well, it's interfering with it somehow because the detecting." No. It's you being aware of what happened. Because if you turn them on, but the data is destroyed before you ever look at it, you get the interference pattern again. That is the craziest thing in the world to me. I don't know if that blows your mind as much as it does mine.
It's interesting to my mind, but like I said, I see it like kind of like a evidence of a simulation, which is ultimately evidence of a creator.
Right. Well, so my thing about the simulation theory, although I don't think it's a computer simulation. However, I understand.
No, I don't either. I'm just using that as like very simple
Yeah.
language, so your brain can grasp it. It's not like hey man, what if we live in a simulation, dude?
Well,
No,
have you
not
thought
like
about
that.
this? So in the Bronze Age, the myth is that Adam and Eve were created out of clay, and then in the age of the steam engine, we had the blind watchmaker making the universe. It's almost like we reinterpret what the universe is in the language of our highest technology. When we as pottery, oh, well, we're clay pots made of the dust of the ground. When it's watchmaking and gears, oh, it's the blind watchmaker. When it's computers, it's computers. It's it's kind of like, oh, right, we're just reinterpreting based on.
Well, it's I think we're created beings that exist inside this universe. So
Right.
we ultimately can't understand it from a perspective of God who exists outside of it. So we kind of look for whatever we know to kind of explain and
Right.
our brains can wrap itself around it.
Right. So okay, so but the point of this is if you ever know the information, if the information can ever be known, it's just like this is the experiment of the tree falling in the woods. Like if you have a microphone there and you're not there, right? But you have a microphone recording it. If the microphone data is destroyed before you look at it, then what happened goes back to the realm of complete probability. The data has to get to you. The data has to get to you. Your consciousness forces the universe into something. And this works because you can't bite your own teeth. This is the universe can't look at itself, and you are part of the universe. Right? The universe can't look at it. You can't. This is what we're doing when we're doing these things is you're trying to see the back of your own head or something. And it can't be done. It can't be done. And this gets back to this is how all things are possible to him who believes, because in a very real sense, you are the one, and not in an airy-fairy way, but in like a hard, we have evidence for this way. You're the one that makes the universe exist as it is. Did the tree even fall? Absent a conscious observer, nothing can ever happen. The idea of all is mind. Werner Heisenberg, one of the guys that was working with all these things, from which we get the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, he had this famous quote. He said, "The first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you." And so the problem with Redditors is they haven't gone far enough. They just drunk the top of it. They haven't gone deep down. Because every time, without fail, when you get into these deeper questions of the sciences, you start getting very philosophical, very like, well, I guess, ideas of like the soul come up. Hard-nosed scientists that you'd never expect, like, well, maybe that's driven by love or some crazy. It'll be like wild what comes out of their mouth. How do you know exist? Two are required to tango. This is the basic. It's the two sticks, the warp and the woof. So we've already established that this planet again, for a moment, for this podcast, assume it all works like that. Is this planet moving? People are gendered, different races exist, the world is filled with different plants and animals and all such things for the simple reason that two are required to a tango. You cannot exist as one thing. Okay. If you had one ball in space, without someone else, motion is impossible. If you had one ball in space and you're looking at it, is it moving? There's no way to tell. There's no way to tell because there's no reference point. If you have two balls, then you can tell that motion is possible. However, you don't really have direction. All you can tell is that the balls are either going apart from each other or coming together. But are they both moving apart? Are they both coming together? Is one staying still and the other's coming to it? Or one staying still and the other's going away from it? You cannot know. When you have three balls, right, involved, now we can know that motion is happening and we can know who is moving. Because you would define, naturally, the one going away from the other two as the one that is in motion, because the cosmos is basically democratic in that way. Majority rules. The two that are staying stationary, they get the vote, and they say, "Oh, this is the 0 point," and the one that's going away is being the deviant, and he's the one traveling away from the majority. And this is why God is a Trinity. This is why. Because 3 is the minimum number of reference points needed for complete information of a system. To know that something is there, first of all, you need the 1 in the space. To know that motion is happening, you need at least 2. And to know who is moving, you need at least 3. The Father is not the Son is not the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is not the Father, but the Father is God, the Holy Spirit is God. This is the classic diagram. 3, this is why 3 is the holy number. It is the minimum number necessary for information to actually, for all information to exist. Any less, if you were just one ball, imagine that you were one, this was the only thing in the universe was this one ball. It could know nothing, really. It could move 10 million light years and it would never know. And in fact, actually it couldn't, because moving 10 million light years and not moving 10 million light years would be the same. There's no, in relation to what? The question. 2 are always required to tango. Existence is relationship. God cannot exist in the classical Jewish or Islamic idea of like a single monotheistic God with no separate parts that is a single unity. It's not possible. Existence actually is relationship, which is why God must exist as multiple persons. I know that's confusing, but I hope to clarify. The theory of relativity, what's the universe relative to? It's relative to you, right? This is why the angel carries a measuring rod. Man is the measure of all things. Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. So compared to what? The sun is bright. Compared to what? Fire is hot. Compared to what? Water is heavy. It's all compared to this man. I got a man here with arrows pointing to him and has a rock, a lion, a monkey, a tree, some water, some fire, and a sun. Rocks are hard. Lions are fierce. Monkeys are dumb. Trees are tall. Water is heavy. Fire is hot. The sun is bright. Compared to what? Right? If we were made of diamonds, granite would not seem hard. We'd go, that's soft granite. Everything would seem soft. We'd have no concept, actually, of hard and soft, because there would be nothing harder than we were. You see? And if there's nothing harder than you, you cannot conceive of that as an option. It doesn't become you would just have this idea that everything but you breaks apart or something like that. The idea of hard and soft would not exist. Monkeys are dumb. Well, monkeys are pretty intelligent compared to other things. What about compared to, if a dog was doing philosophy, it would say monkeys are very smart. Trees are tall. Again, so compared to a mountain, not really. Fire is hot. When I was, I've told you about when I used to do the thing where I had the big dewars of liquid nitrogen. I've mentioned that before. Cavi, do you remember that? I've said that before, haven't I?
The big doers of liquid nitrogen.
When I used to work in
a little bit more information.
Oh, okay. Well, I used to work in a lab that required liquid nitrogen for our devices. But the liquid nitrogen.
Oh, it's coming back.
The liquid nitrogen was contained in another building across the campus. and I had to go fill it in this big insulated. It was called a dewar. It's basically a giant kind of super thermos, because at room temperature nitrogen boils, and so it's like constantly boiling. And fill it up, and I have to carry it across the campus to the lab. And we were working in there one time, and I was mentioning like, well, we got to have the liquid nitrogen. It's always boiling away, and I have to refill it like every other day because it just goes. And this lady one time, she's a smart lady, but she just hadn't thought this through. It was immediately obvious when I pointed it out to her. She said, well, couldn't you get like some ice blocks or a refrigerator, like air conditioner to keep it colder so it wouldn't boil away so hot? And I said, oh, I mean, this thing is like, I forget that. It's like 20 Kelvin. I mean, this is like minus 200. An air conditioner would be like lava. It's so hot in comparison. That would make it boil even faster, because it's not, air conditioning is only cold to our body temperature, right? Ice is only cold to our body temperature. It's not cold in general. And this is why man is the measure of all things.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, go.
What's keeping it cold in the place where you got it from?
What's keeping it cold in the place where we got it from? That's a great question. I'm not quite sure how they actually make liquid nitrogen. How they can? Hold on, I am. It's something to do with pressure because PV equals nRT.
Oh, so they're making it. They're not like storing it somewhere.
Correct. Well, pressure volume equals nR times temperature, and nR is like N is like a molecular, the moles or something, and R is this constant. So if you change the pressure and the volume, you can drop or raise the temperatures. And so that's how they do it. Yeah. So you have this chamber, and you make you do something with the pressure and the volume to cause the temperature to drop instantaneously, so that it turns to liquid. I think what you would have to do is you'd put gaseous nitrogen in a chamber. This is just my off the head idea of what would happen. And then you'd have to suddenly expand the volume of that chamber it was in. And then it would have to, because the pressure dropped so much, because the volume went up, something like that, would have to immediately cool to. It's the same principle as when you blow with your mouth closed, like a small circle, it's cold, and you blow with your mouth wide open, it's hot. Same principle. You have to change the volume, and you can get, so you have to dramatically and rapidly change the volume in which the gas was contained to turn it into a liquid. I think is how you would have to do that. I think that's what you do. But it's PV equals nRT is the formula for that. Anyway, so working with liquid nitrogen was always a challenge for that reason. I one time had to work with liquid oxygen, and that was crazy because that stuff is that's even colder. And we would, and we all the things you see people do with liquid nitrogen, like you put a banana in it and it turns solid, and you hit it on the thing and it shatters. You could do that with liquid oxygen to the nth degree. What you don't, it's actually kind of, don't do it because you do run a risk of freezing your hand. But your hand is so hot, you got to think about it that way in comparison, that it's like you're basically a lava creature. And when you it just starts boiling away from you, like retreats away from your hand as you reach towards it because it's just turning into gas instantly at the approach of your hand. Okay, so it's obvious, therefore, that absent things not you cannot exist. Tell me if this doesn't make sense, Cappy. By the same token, though, if you cannot exist without it, and it cannot exist without you, it must be a part of you. This is the paradox of the one and the many. Like, Hear, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And where it says in Genesis, let us make. God is both one and he is both many. Monotheism and polytheism actually come to the same thing. Does that make sense, Cappy?
I'm following, yes.
Okay. For the listeners who may be struggling, because, and again, they're not hard concepts. They're just new. When you I've heard them a few times, you're like, oh yeah, of course. So without, again, like the light, for the light to actually exist, there has to be something in it. For the shirt to stand up, there has to be something. There has to be a warp side and a wolf side. For anything to be defined or known, it has to be defined in relation to something else. You can't know if motion is happening by yourself. You can't know direction unless there's at least three of you. You can't know what hot is unless there are things that are cold. You cannot know what fierce is unless there are things that are timid. All of reality is defined against other. It's all a relationship. This is why there have to be men and women. And people trying to tear that down. See, the thing is, all of these projects are things to tear down the basics of how reality exists. It's a war against existence itself, because a unity doesn't exist. Making everything the same and equal, there's nothing. A forest is only equal when it's all chopped down with an axe. You know, that's the only time it's ever equal. Otherwise, there are taller trees, there are different kinds of trees, but they're all beautiful trees. You know, all the races of people are beautiful. The blacks and the whites and the Asians and the Middle Easterners and the people that speak Tagalong, they're all beautiful and they all have their own wonderful things about them, and they've all done horrible things in the past and sometimes in the present. But they have to be different, because if they're not different, they don't like you. If everyone was the same, no one's nothing. It's the same as like that in the Incredibles movie. If everyone is a super, no one is. If everyone is the same, there's no. If everyone was one, there's no nothing. Black and white, male and female, Republican, Democrat, Christian, Islam, West and East, Jew and Gentile. St. Paul says, there is now neither Jew nor Greek, nor bond nor free, neither is there male nor female, for all are one in Christ Jesus. But it does not mean by that you have to, that these categories are destroyed. It is rather the revelation that God is. See, he was dealing with Jesus. See, and Jesus was God, but also not the Father. And Paul was like, what the heck does that mean? And he went away after he encountered Jesus for like 3 years while his blindness healed, because he was struck blind with his vision of Jesus. And he meditated on how this could be. And he came to the same idea, because obviously everything is known by something which is not itself. But because those two must always exist together, otherwise they would not exist, then they are actually one. The warp and the woof form the shirt. You cannot do it with just warps. You cannot make a piece of cloth, a piece of fabric out of only warps or only woofs. But they're also the same. They're one piece of thread. This is male and female. This is black and white. This is Republican and Democrat. This is all of it and all of it. That's how it all works. This is why you have to love your enemy, because your enemy is part of you. See? What opposes you is what allows you to exist. Both black and white contain all the colors. How you relate to that, though, how you relate to that opposition makes heaven or hell. That's the difference. This fundamentally is the only difference between the two. Right? Black and white contain all the colors. Reality must always contain all the colors. If you take a ray of white light and you shine it into a prism, you will discover that it's out from that ray of light come all the colors of the rainbow. And if you take all the colors of paint and you mix them all back together, you will discover that you get black. Reality must contain all the colors. You get the choice of how they're combined. One makes heaven, one makes hell. You get to do it. It's your choice. Here's two prisms. One is black, one is white. One has all the colors feeding into it, becoming black. One has all the colors coming out of it, becoming a rainbow. And this is the thing, because this is all relationship, existence is relationship. This is Aquinas was actually wrong. I know that's a big claim, but hey, he should start a podcast. Why didn't he come up with a podcast? He didn't. He wrote a book. He wrote a dumb book, and no one reads books. So, hey, you actually have to exist just as much as God does. This idea that there's necessary beings and contingent beings is not true. All the contingent beings are necessary for one another. And if God had created nothing, if God had created nothing at all ever, that's the same as God never having existed. Because if God did not, it would just be like the black space. A black space, the black square, empty space filled with light or not filled with light, looks exactly the same unless you create something else inside of it. So for all practical purposes, it would be the same as God not existing, which is to say, for all philosophical purposes, God would not exist unless he had made things that were not God. You are one of the ways by which God knows himself because he loves you. And we always know more about ourselves by what we love. Is that a controversial statement? You give God knowledge about himself because he knows how he loves you and relates to you, just as you do anything else you love. And when you make him mad, he discovers ways he's like, in that sense, you are like Jesus, one with him, which is what Jesus was trying to get you to realize. Okay, so what if you actually got everything you ever wanted, right? Would you be human without the work? And this is from the Star Trek episode Hide and Q. Do you remember this one, Kathy? You who've seen them all?
Big enough nerd that you can just say episode titles and I'll be like, oh yeah, that one. No.
Are you?
I've seen it like every episode once. No, I'm not. I'm nowhere near that big of a nerd. You gotta tell me a little bit more and I might remember.
This is the one where Q...
So if you watch...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you watch like the Red Letter Media guys or whatever, they're huge Star Trek nerds. And you can just drop an episode name and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, it's the one where they did that." I'm not on that level.
Okay, that's fine. It would be fine if you were. No judgment here. We only know nerds by those who are not nerds. If everyone had that level of dedication to Star Trek, it would just be normal. We'd just call it being normal. There would be no such thing as a nerd. You only know nerds by those who are not.
Maybe almost tell you some episode titles for Stargate. I could maybe tell you some episode titles for Stargate.
Yeah, that's a great show. SG-1,
I've watched that way more than Star Trek. Yeah, SG-1, Atlantis, even Universe is good.
Yeah, great show. How'd you feel about the movie with Kurt Russell?
The original movie?
Yeah.
It's not amazing, but it's fun, and you kind of have to watch it to set up the show.
Yeah. Okay, so in this episode of Star Trek, it was one of the early, I think season 2, it's one of the early ones. What I love about the next generation of Star Trek is the first episode starts with Q. They really go into it with a bang. They're like, first episode, new show, introduce a godlike being that can do whatever. Very ambitious. But he comes throughout the series now and again. He pops back up. And this is in season 2. He shows up, and he's that guy. He's dressed in a Franciscan friar's robe in the back there. And he gives Commander Riker, who's the first officer on the Enterprise, the powers of Q. He gives him godlike powers, and does this as a test to see what humanity would do if they have godlike powers. And of course, it sort of makes Riker a little crazy, and you can see his eyes there. He's really hamming it up for the camera. But he says, Captain Picard, another great character of TV. Played by the wonderful Patrick Stewart. He says he realizes this is Q's test of humanity. Will it basically destroy itself by having anything it wants, or will it be wise enough to reject it? And Picard calls Riker's bluff. He says, "Fine, give anyone on my crew anything that you think they want." And Geordi, who's this black guy here, who's also played Kunta Kinte in Roots. That's Kunta Kinte. Also, you may know him as the guy from Reading Rainbow. I forget the guy's name, the actual actor. Great actor. But he's there, and he wears this visor the whole show because he's blind. And in the 24th century, they've cured everything except his specific kind of blindness. And so he has to wear this visor where he can see, which is it looks like it's a very 80s visor, a very 90s visor. And he cures his blindness, but he says, "No, turn me back the way I was." And you go, "What?" And he offers Worf he's this Klingon. He's been away from Klingons forever. He materializes this sexy Klingon, sexy for a Klingon. They're all kind of weird looking. I wouldn't be into the weird giant heads, but sexy for a Klingon. And he offers to make Data, that guy in the brown there, who's an android, alive, because Data has always wanted to be. His whole quest throughout the series is trying to figure out how to be more human. And all of the team rejects it. Let me see he says this thing up here. He says, "I never wanted to compound one illusion with another. It might be real to Q, perhaps even to you, but it would never be so to me." That's what he says when we're rejecting being turned into a human. And that's correct, isn't it? You feel that like if a computer man was suddenly turned into a human and he didn't grow and develop into that human. He didn't whatever that would mean. It would be fake. It would not be him. It would be a different person in his body. And this is why they all ultimately reject these gifts. Because they're saying, we have to do it on our own. We cannot, if we have this godlike power, things will fall apart. And so, also, I should have included this. There's Will Wheaton in the back. He plays Wesley Crusher in that little blue sweater. In the show, he's always wanted to be older because he feels insecure that he's on this. He's a child genius and he's on this ship and surrounded by these adults. So Riker briefly makes him 25 years old, and the actor they got to play him as a 25-year-old has like a chiseled jaw, great hair, looks so complimentary to Will Wheaton. That's not what he turned out to look like when he turned.
Not at all.
Not at all. But they really had high hopes for what he would look like. He's like 6'4", got this chiseled jaw, just massive shoulders. He's like, oh, yes, well, I appreciate it. Change me back. I'd rather get here on my own. And then you get Will Wheaton instead. Anyway, I should have included that. As an aside, this is how Star Trek is supposed to be. It's supposed to be zany and bananas. It's supposed to be just bonkers. The reason Star Trek isn't good anymore is because they've tried to take it too serious. These are some pictures from Star Trek. They're like in these weird outfits. One time they had to be Robin Hood for some reason, and Data was an Old West sombrero slinging a gun. And it was supposed to. What the premise of Star Trek that made it good was, it's like, okay, we're going to take a plot device from Looney Tunes and play it completely straight. Just pretend it all makes sense, and we're going to play it straight as if this is a serious thing. That was the magic of it. But then they got to Deep Space Nine, and it kind of deconstructed itself, where it was like, which had to happen because the whole like part of the thing is like, oh, there's Starfleet and it's benevolent, but then they were like, oh, well, it's so benevolent, but we're having to force it upon people, and isn't this kind of forcing our culture on people, even though we claim that it's the whole thing, which is true, and that's what liberals do today. They're against colonialism, but also everyone has to have liberal values, which is itself a form of colonialism. And once you realize that, the whole thing breaks down. But as long as you're blind to it, it doesn't, and so forth and so on. But after you've deconstructed yourself, it's hard to get back. So now they're always trying to play it all serious, and it doesn't really work as well. You have to be. It's supposed to be a completely. Even the original series from the very beginning was completely bonkers. Okay, omnipotent power. This is what you learn in many things, not least with the character of Discord in My Little Pony Secret Friendship is Magic, but also in Star Trek, is that omnipotent power used destroys all distinctions between things. Omnipotent power used destroys being itself. So imagine you could be anywhere you wanted instantaneously. Then all places become the same place. Right? Think about it. If anywhere you could think, you just appeared. Poof. There'd be no here or there anymore. Terrence McKenna had a great thought experiment one time. He was doing his 2012 thing, where he was the end of the world at 2012, and the singularity and all that stuff, which didn't pan out. But the idea was, he said, I think what the end of the world is we invent time travel. And it was I think this was at a trialogue, one of his favorite. Some of the best hours of listening you'll ever do, they're almost all on YouTube, I think, is look up the trialogues, like dialogue, but with 3. The trialogues between Terrence McKenna, Ralph Abraham, and Rupert Sheldrake. They sit on these mats like they're yogis in this place in California with this like lecture, and they're just talking about this crazy stuff. It's great. And he says here they're talking about revelations, actually, in one of them, the apocalypse and the end of the world. And Terrence McKenna says, I think what the end of the world would be time travel's invented. That's essentially the end of the world. And they say, why? He says, well, think about it. The moment that the lady temponaut, like astronaut or the temporal knot, travels forward in time, and time travel is possible, then it is also possible at every moment after that. And from that instant, all time is the same time because there's no barrier between them anymore. In a very trivial way, in a much more like smaller way, we've already done this with the aeroplane. People are bemoaning right now the lack of place and culture and stuff. Well, okay, but yeah, what the thing that made it be different was they were separated. When the aeroplane can get anyone to anywhere in the world in one day for a pretty small price, when you think about it, like, you can fly from anywhere in the USA to Japan or Africa for under $1,000. That all places kind of become the same place. And that's just a consequence of the technology. And no political policy you could ever put in place will make that not be if we had instantaneous teleportation, everywhere is the same place. Everywhere is the same place. The idea of place depends upon distance. But if you could cross distances instantaneously, place no longer exists. Imagine you could have anything you wanted whenever you wanted it. Same thing. All desires become equal and equally trivial. Value itself breaks down. If anything can be had in infinite abundance at all times, anywhere, and anything instantaneously, nothing is valued over anything else. The concept of value breaks down. The concept of desire breaks down. Desire no longer exists. Passion no longer exists because everything is fulfilled instantaneously. Imagine you could overcome any obstacle. There was never any barrier before you. You could become anything. You become everything, and then everything is the same as nothing, which is the same thing as that black square. Existence is a relationship. You have to have something which is not you, which resists you in some capacity. There has to be a space it takes time to traverse for place to exist. There has to be something standing in your way. A barrier, what it does is it makes a distinction between two things. If there is no wall between the cells, the cell is dead and the organism dies. Existence is relationship. You have to have the thing in the light for the light to exist. The only way for an omnipotent being to exist in the universe is to renounce his power, which is what he did when he humbled himself and became as a child. That's the only way. Otherwise, existence itself breaks down. It's actually really hard to be God. It's very hard. You're so big, you destroy everything unless you renounce it. And then you say, but Sumo, I reckon, Sumo, is it then hopeless? Can God do nothing for our prayers? Are we doomed to suffer evil and death forever and be subject to all the constraints? No! And this is the real part. I have a picture here of a barren landscape with a grayed out zebra. And there's rose-colored glasses in the shape of hearts, sunglasses. And through the lenses, it's a perfect paradise. It's looking through rose-colored glasses. In fact, everything is possible, but the same external reality, because these opposition must exist, but the way you relate to that opposition is everything. Reality will be perceived differently by different people based on their internal state. The external world is yourself pushed out. This is a realist. I've got the meme here of this guy with his little thinking cap on. He's pointing at a hot dog skateboarding with sunglasses. He says, "This sucks, actually." And it's literally the coolest thing ever. And so a realist is a person. This is a realist, this guy, quote unquote realist. The same guy saying like, oh, real life is this terrible stuff and all that, trees and horses are stupid. A realist can look out at the world, which is objectively beautiful, obviously organized and thought out, and declare it uncaring, random, and ugly, inventing every sort of philosophy and science to justify doing that. That's what a realist is. That's what people mean by a realist. A realist is a way of saying, I hate the world. That's all it is. This is the same reality, but different facts, heaven and hell. Here's a picture of a beautiful baby with very cute, with a little white bonnet on, blue eyes, and a yellow blanket, wrapped up in a yellow blanket. Heaven, adorable. What a cutie. I can't wait to have one. I love him so much. He loves me. We're going to have so much fun together. Hell, ew, diapers. Babies are weird. I don't want children. Love is just a chemical in the brain. Babies aren't conscious enough to have feelings. I have to pay for this thing for 18 years. It's the same opposition. This is a thing that is not you. But if you love it, it's heaven. If you hate it, it's hell. And this is everything. This is everything. This is why if you become filled with love, everything is heaven. And when people say they hate stuff, all they're saying is, I am filled with hate. That's all. That is because it's the same world, but someone's looking through these glasses and someone's looking through different glasses. Here's another picture down here. The kingdom of heaven was within you. It's that same picture of the man with all the lion and the stone and the fire pointing to him. Man and woman is the measure of all things, and heaven and hell are defined by the state of the individual. Just as fire is hot in relation to what? You. Stones are hard in relation to what? You. Lions are fierce in relation to what? You. So good and bad are in relation to what? You. The cosmos is yourself pushed out. If your soul is right, everything becomes heaven and nothing ever dies. And that is absolutely true. Jesus' promises are true. Here's the same picture with an icon of a woman because Maps always passes the Bechdel test. And we believe in empowering women. There you go. The more you see heaven, the more you see heaven. To him who has, more shall be given, but to him who does not have, even what he has shall be taken. The person that looks at this baby and says, ew, man, and only sees negatives, the more you look at the negatives, the more all you ever see is the negatives. The more you all look at the positives, the more all you ever see is the positives. The more you see heaven, the more you see heaven, and you get to choose that. This is why the black pill is pure poison. The black pill is, and most people treat the red pill as the black pill as well. They say, thing? Bad. Whatever it is, whatever's happening, they go, bad, whatever it is. You know, I wrote a little message for my Japanese neighbors. They've been our neighbors for about 5 years. They have to go back to Japan. He's been over here working for a Japanese company. He has to go back to Japan because his time here is up. They would rather stay because America is the best. And he told me so. But because he's had to work in the professional world, his English has gotten, I would say, medium. His English is okay. He probably speaks at a low, maybe a high A2 level English. Not quite a B1, but a high A2. His wife, however, has not had as much. She's not been forced to interact with the world, however, and she and their kids. Her English is a lower level. So I wrote them a little message in Japanese. And to do that, I used a wonderful tool called AI. I wrote my message in English. I said, please translate this for me. And it did in Japanese characters. And that's a wonderful thing that can happen. And everyone says, but all you see is the bad. I said, bad. All the people on my Substack are like, AI, bad. But all they're doing is they're saying, I'm uncreative. I don't know how to use this for good. I'm fearful. You're just pushing it out. That's the universe is yourself pushed out. The person that looks at a baby and sees only diapers also looks up to heaven and sees only wrath. A person that looks at a baby and sees only diapers looks up to heaven and sees only wrath. Yeah, and this is why so many people are depressed. Same principle. People are like, I don't want to have a kid. Imagine all this. I only see the negative. The most beautiful, most innocent thing in the world, and you only see negative and complaints. What do you expect? Thus, very often, it is exactly the pious, those most fearful of hell, who least believe, because they look up at heaven and they see, oh, the wrath, and look at the evil, and they're so focused. Very, very often, it is the pious that believe the least. Who believes more, my friends? Who believes more? The monk in his cell, fearful of hell, praying every day, reading the scriptures, beating himself with a whip, fasting, mortifying the flesh, on the vague hope that maybe he'll get into heaven and God will forgive him, or the man that murders someone and prays to God, hey, I messed up. In prison, forgive me. And he has confidence that will happen. Who believes more in the forgiveness of God? Exactly. You see? Of course such people are going to hell. Hell is already inside them. You see? That's the thing. Everyone actually goes to the same place. I don't know if you know this. What is the fire? What could burn for eternity aside from the light of God? Just as a man walking out into the sunshine may experience it as beautiful and warm, if he's lived For months inside a cave, it will blind his eyes and hurt him when he steps outside. Gollum in the cave shrinked away from the sunlight because he'd spent decades living in darkness. In exactly the same way, there is not like different eternity. There's just the one. But the way you go there determines who you are, determines everything about it. If you've lived in the darkness, if you've chosen the darkness, if you've loved the darkness, loved the misery, loved the hatred, then of course the presence of infinite love and light is going to burn you. And by the same token, if you have lived in a different way, then you perceive it as only love and light and beauty. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. And there's the black square. You know, my favorite theologian. Have you ever read George MacDonald, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I've heard that name. Didn't he get involved in some giant scandal or something recently?
No, he's been dead forever.
Oh, okay, I'm confused.
He was well, not forever. He's been dead for a while. He was friends with Lewis Carroll, who wrote the Alice in Wonderland book. So he's early 1900s. He passed away.
Thinking of someone very different then.
Yeah, no. George MacDonald. He's a Scottish guy. He was a Protestant, I guess. Although I don't think he really claimed any titles. I think he felt no need to claim titles. He was not preaching under the rubrics of the Catholic Church, but he was not preaching under really any. He was just sort of like a wandering preacher, like a John the Baptist type character. But his sermons, he was the guy that really converted C.S. Lewis to Christianity. Tolkien helped, but Lewis wrote a whole book about MacDonald and how he helped him, and he put MacDonald as his Virgil-like guide. You know, in Dante's Inferno, Dante is guided by Virgil through hell and purgatory and paradise. And in The Great Divorce, the soul of Lewis is guided by, similarly, George MacDonald up to heaven. So George MacDonald wrote these sermons called Unspoken Sermons, which he never delivered, but he has them like in person, but he wrote them down. And those things, I've never encountered a higher view of God than those. And there's not a trace of like this vindictive God that hates people and wants to, not a trace of it. And you're like, you read it and you're like, oh, of course this is what it must be. And he has this line that says, God is light, and never let anyone convince you that in him there is even a little darkness. Even a little darkness. He says, how is it that so many of you believe bad things about God? And you say, we do not. What are you talking about? We do not believe bad things about God. And he said, oh, but do you not think he's sitting there like a judge waiting to condemn and hate you and all these horrible things? And actually, the darkness is only your unwillingness to have a relationship with something. If you're unwilling to have a relationship, you just have a black square. It's only when the planet is in there. It's only when something else which isn't you is there that light can happen at all. That's the only time love can happen. It's the only time love can happen. But if you're not willing to have that love, then of course everything is perceived as darkness. Of course. There's no other option. And that, my friends, is the difficulty with being God. Because, I mean, imagine you have to deal with it. That's the sort of like what you have to deal. You have the omnipotent power, but using it outright like that. Now you can in limited circumstances, but destroys everything. It destroys the whole. Imagine you're playing a game of chess, but you let the other person take back every move, or you took back every move. The game stops working. You know, there has to be infinite power destroys the whole thing. The only way you can exist is to renounce it. But then that renunciation actually gives the fulfillment of the omnipotent power, because now you're all in all. God is everything, doing everything, right? In some sort of strange, hard to see way, without destroying everything, because it is the universe is participating in a co-creative way in existence. Did that make any sense, Cabby? Did any of that presentation make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I hope we don't bomb Iran. But all that to say, the proper way to understand the Jew-Gentile distinction is not what they're doing. It's not what they're doing. That's not how you do it. They don't. That's not how you do it. People are too. They don't have enough mysticism. Isn't something that's like optional. It's the only way you can really begin to understand things, in my opinion. The people that try to rely on science or read the Bible or whatever, theology is an art form. Philosophy is an art form. When you try to treat it like a science, it loses all its power and in fact becomes destructive. It must be something where you express the beauty of existence in. And if you're not doing that, it becomes worthless. It becomes something very destructive. To the extent that Aquinas did that, he was good. To the extent that he got away from that, he was bad, in my opinion. And I think he made some errors about the nature of existence. I know that's a big claim for people that hold Aquinas in high regard. And I also hold him in high regard, but we all make mistakes, myself included. I'm sure some of the things I say are wrong. They have to be. I'm not sure which ones, but they have to be. But anyway,
how
they have to be. There's no way I get everything right. But I hope at least to make people think, to make people question maybe their assumptions about how the world works and how God works and to make them figure it out for themselves. And that's the ultimate message. You have to work through this yourself, because you can't have it given to you. You can't have it given to you. It won't work. It won't work. You have to have your own relationship with God. And you will, whether you want to or not. So if you don't want to, you're like the person choosing hell. But if you do want to, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's actually not that hard. How's things in Canada, Cabby?
Warming up again?
Yeah, we're coming up on spring.
Yeah, it's finally the days are longer. It doesn't get dark at 4:30. Getting nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. What's been going on with me? Well, I started the Girl Scouts with my youngest. It's going to be fun. We've got my oldest is at the age where she's beginning to argue with me about time travel. That's also interesting. The other one's gotten into weightlifting, which is going to be hard. I got to figure out how to do that more often. So I don't know. We got a lot of big changes happening. I got being Japanese. Got to deal with that. I bought my Japanese neighbors some cowboy hats. They love them because Japanese people love everything that's America, and they're like, oh, I knew it wasn't something they bought for themselves as a souvenir from their time in America. But now, and my wife was like, they're never going to wear those. I was like, I know. What they're going to do is they're going to have them in their house in Japan, and then when friends come over, they're going to say, your time in America, how was that? And they're going to, and then they'll say, hey, remember we got those cats that our neighbor gave to us, and they're put them on, and they just go, look, I'm going to go bang bang and pretend he's in Old West, and they're going to all laugh in Japanese, and it's going to be something they remember. So of course it was a good idea. Of course it was a good idea to get the hats. Everyone agrees.
Maybe they're secretly those Japanese people. The Old West culture and cosplay it and all that stuff.
They might be. I don't know. I think
they might become.
They might become that. They might become that. The first day their child came to the school with it was actually preschool. He brought, it was the most Japanese thing. His mother had packed him a bento box full of sushi for preschool. And I was like, this is the most Japanese family that's ever existed. Anyway, and his name is Yoshi, like the dinosaur, except it's pronounced Yoshi, like that, very harsh.
I was wondering who Yoshi was.
Yeah, Yoshi, like that, Yoshi. Japanese culture, I think it was, Schopenhauer. He divided cultures into masculine cultures and feminine cultures, and Japan is a very masculine culture under his and that just means in his thing, those that seeded ideas to others and those that were receptive of ideas and nurtured them into something else. And the Germanic cultures were largely he classified as feminine cultures, and the Japanese and a few others, I forget which, but it's an interesting read. But you can hear the Japanese is sort of a very masculine language, really, which is not something you think about because you think of them as being sort of
it sounds like somebody's trying to lift up a house.
It does. What? Like that. It's very intense. Anyway, everyone, let's all learn Japanese. That'll be the thing. This next episode we'll do in Japanese. How about that, Cavi?
Okay.
Love you all, everybody. Hope you have a great whatever you're doing. Happy Lent, whatever you're celebrating out there. Feast well, fast well, whatever. Till next time. Bye-bye.